I went to school for acting for college, undergrad, and part of what was challenging about that is I'm mixed race, I'm black and white, and I'm very good at text, I can handle text, but when you're doing someone else's text, a lot of people want you to be one thing. They want you to be black or white. They want your voice to sound one singular way. My voice has a lot of different things in it, and I felt like it inhibited innovation, and I spent more time answering people's questions about my body than being able to do the work I wanted to do. So then I started to train as a clown where it's like no words, no text. All you do is reflect the person across from you. So it's like I come out, I see you, you see me, we play a little game. And like it's like such a fun, present way to be in the world. Nobody asked me about my voice when I did it. So I was like, that's it. I'm going to be a clown. That's what I'm going to do for the rest of my life. I will never use words again. And then I became a writer. But the beauty of that is like I started writing the way that I speak, which is nuance. Like if I talk like my daddy, that's one thing. If I talk like my mother, that's another thing. Like my mother is very like, oh, everything's fine and everything's good. And my daddy has like a real deep, resonant, Kanisha, this is what's going on, blah, blah, blah. My body does all of those things. Unapologetically, you can call it code switching, except for it's totally authentic. And I wanted to do work that had all of that in it. Like, and when I hear stories about mixedness, when I hear stories about like my great uncle invented bubble wrap, would take us to these restaurants to celebrate my grandmother that were like hundreds of dollars per plate. They would let us dance on the tables. They would let us be whoever we wanted to be in that space because of the money and the whiteness. And then I would go home and we didn't have any food in our house and I couldn't eat for a week. And I had a very different experience. And I go to my dad's family and it was like cookouts and love and celebration, just like the abundance of care. And all of these different spaces were so different from each other. And I felt like everybody wanted you to tell one story. And I'm not down with that. I had to become a writer because my stories are bigger than I am. So I really was chasing stories. Like I was an actor and I was backstage doing a play and everybody was like telling the stories that they tell. And I was like, And I was like, well, this one time my dad robbed a bank. And then everybody was like, woo. And I was like, oh, right. Not everybody's story. That's my story. But this company just happened to be starting this storytelling, I would say festival, but really event, which really became the core of our work, which was to do creative nonfiction, fuse it with music and wine, and learn to tell your real stories. So I actually started telling my parents' stories because they were so big. So I started telling the stories of my dad, of him being dragged out to the desert, of his incarceration, of being his kid, of this time. I always tell the story of this time when my dad, like when he would steal, it was also like a magic trick. It was like kind of amazing. Like this one time I wasn't supposed to let him in when my mom wasn't home and I opened the door and, my sister opened the door and I was putting our TV away. I was trying to hide it so he wouldn't steal it. And he saw it and he sat me down and he was like, how could you do this? Like, I love you. This is what you think of me. And I was like so sad about it that it hurt my dad's feelings. And he gave me a hug and he was like, I love you. Like all we have is each other. We have to believe in each other. And then he left and I was like getting tissue and I heard my mom coming up the stairs. So I went to go get the TV and put it back and it was gone. He had stolen it and the VCR like while I was crying. And then I opened the door and my mom had the TV and the VCR in her arms and she was like, oh, is your father here? And it's like a horrible story, of course it is, but it's also kind of amazing, like how did he do that? What did it take to do that? And so I was curious about that and thinking about the steps it would take to create that kind of magic and also the kind of innovation and the kind of intuitive person that could do that, the kind of intelligence that could have been used in other places. My dad is very smart, very charismatic, everybody's favorite person. You couldn't walk down the street without him like being stopped by a million people. But essentially, I mean, my memory is like going to movie theaters all day long and sneaking from one movie to the next with him and then like getting change from the seats in between and then to buy candy. And then we'd sit there and he would say like, this is what happened. And this is what happened when I got dragged into the desert. And this is what happened, when I became a Black Panther, and this is what happened when I first got arrested, and this is what happened when I accidentally robbed a bank.